Before we get started again, I wanted to just mention something that is in the chat. If you didn't see it, it may have scrolled past, which is great because of all the good dialogue that's happening in the chat window. But I wanted to mention something that came up in the last discussion about inclusion. Dan Reardon entered some information in the chat box along with his email address. Our board just recently created a new Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. It's being chaired by Chief Scott Schubert, who many of you know through his work as our State Law Enforcement Torch Run Director. We have several board members and staff who are part of the committee, and their next step is to recruit volunteers and athletes to join them as part of that important work. So if you're interested, please reach out to Dan. Again, he put more information in the chat along with his email address. Please contact him with your interest. Depending on how many people express interest, we may have to limit participation, which would be an interesting challenge to have. But we know this is important, and so we want to bring in folks who are interested in helping us do better in that area. So again, follow up with Dan if you have questions or you're interested in being part of that. I'd now like to turn it over to Gina Reed, our Vice President of Regional Growth. I think all of you probably know Gina at this point, but I'm going to turn it over to Gina, who is going to introduce the next topic, which is regionalization, and bring in the rest of the team to give you an update about that important area of our work. Gina.
Great. If you would advance to the next slide, we will get started. Thank you, Matt. I'm really excited. Today, we are going to provide a regionalization update. We will share some early successes in the greater Lehigh Valley Pocono region and share some of the new processes and plans that are outlined in the regional playbook that you will expect to be able to see when you regionalize. When thinking about regionalization, our focus is on more and better. Regionalization will provide more accountability to our statewide strategic goals and create a sustainable structure that can promote program growth, hopefully serve more athletes, provide more support, provide better volunteer and athlete experiences, and we truly believe that regionalization will successfully position SOPA for the next 50 years. Next. Awesome. As you all know, our first region went live in January 2020, and we planned to add 2 more regions in 2021, but were delayed due to COVID. We are excited to be moving forward and will launch 2 more regions in January 2022. We have formally announced that those 2 regions will be Region 2 and 7. As you can see in the image to the right, this will give you just a good idea if you're not familiar with where the regions are, where they are located in the state. So excited to share a little bit more about those 2 regions. Next. Great. As you know, each of our regions as we move to this new structure is focused on helping to grow fundraising, community relationships, sports programming, and increasing the administrative support to our local programs. Region 2, as you noticed, includes Center, Clearfield, Clinton, Du Bois Jefferson, Elk Cameron, McKean, and Potter counties. The director position for this region is currently posted. The administrative position in both of these regions for Region 2 and 3 will be a position that will oversee multiple regions. I'm excited to share that Kathy Guy, who is our current program director of our Allegheny program, will transition into a new regional role, and she will assume that role for Region 2. We're really excited to add her to this team based on her organizational knowledge and experience. It will certainly be a huge benefit to this team for Region 2. For Region 7, it is made up of Adams, Area M, Lancaster, Lebanon, Mifflin, Judiana, and York counties. And again, this region will also benefit from some of our excellent staff. Carrie Weavido will assume the Regional Executive Director position, and Shannon Peckart will assume the Regional Sport Director position. Both Carrie and Shannon have been members of our Area M team, and again, will provide some great leadership for this region. We will be posting and hiring for the remaining regional positions in the 4th quarter of this year. So it's really exciting for us to be taking the next steps. If we would go to the next slide. I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of where we go kind of from here. And I hope it's not a surprise to you that statewide regionalization will take several years. As I mentioned, we are in the process of hiring for our regional director. We are going to begin looking for new office locations for those 2 new regions. We will begin posting and hiring for that staff. At the end of the 4th quarter, one of the exciting things that happens that instead of us calling them Region 2 and Region 7, we are eager to engage our local programs in agreeing on a name for those new regions. And once we identify official names for the new regions, we will begin working with our marketing and communication teams to create our regional websites and logos. All of that really makes it feel official. And in January 2022, we will go live with those 2 new regions. In January 2023, we will add 3 more regions. And finally, in January 2024, we will have our last 3 regions that will be added, and our state will be regionalized at that point. It's a really exciting process, and I'm excited to be part of it. I'm going to turn things over right now to Julie Benjamin, who is our Regional Executive Director for the Greater Lehigh Valley and Pocono region. And Julie's going to share some of the early successes that they have experienced in their region. Julie, it's all yours.
Great. Thanks, Gina. I think everyone can agree it's been a little bit of a challenge standing up the first region in the midst of a pandemic. But as Gina said, we've been able to have some great successes. And I will tell you, it's been a team effort. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of the volunteers in our region, our staff, and our athletes who've been a part of making these early successes actually come to fruition. I think, first and foremost, we worked on the regional playbook. And that was comprised of a group of athletes and staff. Also, volunteers worked on that. And it's really the roadmap for all of us. It's going to help us to sort of see where we need to move forward. You can find it by going to the SOPA website. You'll see Nick will be following along. It's on under volunteer resources, the Volunteer Center, and then you will find it. It's organized in 2 ways. Number 1, by audience. So you can look it up if you are by athlete, or you can look it up by coach. And it's also organized by categories. You can see fundraising, sports, communications. And I think lastly, what I really want to emphasize is that it's a living document. So this is what we've come up with as of today. But we're evolving, and as new regions come on, we'll learn new lessons. And so the playbook will evolve as we learn and are able to make it better at each and every step along the way. But it's been a group effort to get the playbook together, and I encourage you to have a look through to see what we've gotten slated so far on that. Also, we have been able to start the new online registration process. And I know that later on today, Chelsea will be able to talk a little bit more in depth about that, but we've been working on that. We've been also piloting a pre-season rosters. So that's going to be a great way for us to get information ahead of time and use that then each following season after that to keep us up to date with what we're able to do. We've had some good success also in fundraising. The Polar Pop turned out to be lemonade from the lemons of not being able to do in person. We engaged everyone in our region, and a number of our regions had the best performance ever. So that was good for us as well. We had local and regional grants have come in. We engaged all 7 teams actually for our Polar Pop and for our grants. And then we had the first ever splash party in Schuylkill. And that's just a good example of working together, everyone, to create what started out as a fun idea for a way to get people together, turned into a great partnership and a great fundraising opportunity. So kudos to what we did there. We've also been able to engage our global messengers in a number of opportunities to speak on behalf of the region. They've ranged from speaking to a college class on disability, independence, and functioning from a public health perspective, TV interviews, also working with local Rotaries and corporate employee sessions have been included. And I'm very excited to say that we have started a new partnership with Head Start and Lehigh Carbon Community College. The students will be earning fieldwork credit, and they will be trained as young athlete coaches, and we'll be starting a pilot program for Head Start that we hope to expand to include the entire region. And of course, lastly, we're very excited to say that all 7 of our local teams will be offering in-person sports in the fall. So we're hopefully heading in the right direction. We've been able to get started, and we look forward to being able to do so much more. We're proud of our accomplishments, and I'm particularly proud of all of our volunteers and our athletes who have helped us along the way. Back to you, Gina.
Great, thanks, Julie, and great job to you and your team and the local programs. We know transition and change is not easy, and you all have certainly embraced what the future looks like for your region, and it's great to hear that success. How we move forward in an organization is important, and we want you to be as excited about the opportunities as we are. Using the regional playbook as a guide, we had hoped to provide departmental updates in breakout rooms today to dive into changes and improvements that you might be able to expect once you regionalize. But due to the change in format, we've had to pivot and adjust. And today, instead, we will provide high-level teasers or little commercials in each of these different areas. You're going to hear from our department leads, and each of them have scheduled follow-up webinars that will dig much deeper into the content of what they're going to cover today. Those webinars will allow you to better engage and ask questions about those focus areas. You'll see references to the webinars on their slides, and we will also share them again at the end. So I'm excited to share these updates and allow you to hear from my colleagues and some athletes. So without any further ado, let's get started. We're going to start with athlete leadership. So Jordan, take it away.
Thank you, Gina, and hi, everybody. So one of the things that, one of the very first things actually that I envisioned when reorganization became a discussion was having a regional athlete leadership team. Each team would be chaired by the athlete representative on the Regional Input Council, and they would not only be able to provide better updates from their athlete representatives, but also be able to support all internal goals within the region. I would like to, so if you don't mind going to the next slide, I would also like to turn it over to talk further to our Greater Lehigh Valley Pocono representative, Amanda Knaus from Team Bethlehem.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Knaus, and I am the rec representative from the Greater Lehigh Valley Pocono region. We started a regional athlete leadership team about a year ago. That includes one athlete representative from each local teams. We meet about every other month. The regional team has given us a chance to share information and ideas that will make the local team stronger. It also helps me prepare for the rec meetings. Our team is working on ideas for growing athlete leadership within the region and ways that athletes can support regional goals. For an example, we have talked about upcoming events like the Polar Pop and the Fitness Heptathlon, provided information to the reps that they can share with their athletes. I am really excited about the future of athlete leadership in our region. When the regional staff reaches out to connect with reporters, donors, and organizations, and athlete leaders are included. In the future, there will be more opportunities for athlete leaders to work on regional project teams such as competitions and other events. Back to Jordan.
Thank you, Amanda. a lot of great stuff happening in the Regional Input Council, and we're only going to grow from here. So Julie alluded to some of the great opportunities that we've been doing for our athlete leaders a little bit, but we can move to the next slide, please. As the greater theme, as Gina, Julie, and everyone has referenced throughout about reorganization, it's all about more and better opportunities. Is not just in sports, but everything that SOPA does. So Amanda talked about the regional athlete leadership team, and you may be wondering, what about the athlete representatives that are not on the regional athlete leadership team? Well, the good news is we'll have opportunities for them as they can serve on other committees, such as games organizing, in other sports, fundraising, outreach committees is throughout the region. Additionally, Global Messengers, as Julie mentioned, will be able to speak with several groups, not just in their counties, but every county within the region. And the same thing with health and fitness coordinators. They'll be able to offer health and fitness opportunities to not just their team, but everybody. And with more regional competitions, there will be even more opportunities for Global Messengers, health and fitness coordinators, and every athlete leader to really take a huge step forward in making their region more athlete-led and athlete-focused. So as you see at the bottom, we'll be talking more about this on October 25th at 7 p.m. I'll be sending an email out sometime the next month to all of our current athlete leaders and mentors, but everybody, of course, is welcome to join, especially any athletes or volunteers that aren't involved with athlete leadership but would like to be. Before handing it back over, I just want to give a shout out to all of our Regional Input Council representatives that are here with us today, as well as several other athlete leaders and mentors too, for taking the time today to learn about what we're going to talk about this weekend up in State College. And for those that weren't originally going to make it, it's great to have you on as well. I know several of you are going to have questions, so I'm happy to answer questions that you have in the chat while we continue forward with this session.
Thanks, Jordan. You can actually go to the next slide. So hello, everyone. I'm Michelle Boone, SOPA's VP for Sports, and I'm really just going to scratch the surface on this topic today. I've decided to take the approach to outline the goals we have within the strategic plan for sport-related growth in the regions. We're going to cover training competition, unified sports, coach trainings, and then regional sport management teams. As Gina had already mentioned, just really, if you have more interest in this area, you can join us for a deeper dive and really covering kind of the how behind some of these things for that webinar on Tuesday, September 14th. So just want to welcome all of you to join us for that. You can go to the next slide. So these are our goals around athlete training and competition. And they include, first, ensuring that every athlete has at least 2 competition opportunities each season per sport. So right now within our kind of policies, it's 1, that all athletes have to have at least 1 competition opportunity. So again, making that goal, as part of regionalization, just to allow more of those opportunities for our athletes, that increasing that number to 2. And again, that's every athlete for each sport that they participate in. And then the second is by a region's 3rd year, they will host a regional competition in every sport offered within that region. Our 3rd one here is a state level goal, but we could never accomplish it without assistance from all of our local programs and regions. So you'll hear more about athlete performance training in our next session, but our goal here is that by 2024, at least 75% of our training sites will have integrated athlete performance training into their training season. And again, as I said, you'll hear more about what that is in the next session. You can go to the next slide. These are 2 really important items that we're rolling out within the region. So first is training site assessments. And this is something that will allow our regional staff to ensure consistency from one training site to another. This is one of the focuses that we've had within regionalization, and it's really ensuring that all of our athletes are receiving a equal quality sport experience, both at their training sites and at any competitions that are being offered. This assessment form is currently in the process of being developed. It's something else that Greater Lehigh Valley Pocono region has really owned in getting this up and running and off the ground. And we'll be pulling together some focus groups. So we'll be sharing with all of our statewide sport directors for their specific sports, but also pulling together some focus groups of athletes and coaches, just to make sure that we're collecting all of the necessary information. And then I think more importantly, putting together an evaluation tool that is evaluating them fairly, so that we're able to really compare one training site to another equally. The second that we have on here is preseason rosters. So instituting a preseason roster will allow regions and the organization as a whole just to have an effective way of gathering information before the season begins. And this will enable us to just make better informed decisions with the ultimate goal always of better serving our athletes. So you can go to the next slide. This here is around our unified sport offerings. So the first is that all local programs are offering at least one community-based unified sport by next year, 2022. So we're very close. And I would just ask that if we have any programs here on the call today that are not currently offering, that you do a direct follow-up with your field directors who are more than willing to help offer assistance. And, we as a competition team can help as well. But again, really our goal that we've got at least some community-based unified offerings happening within all of our local programs. And then here, some of our regional goals include sponsoring at least one unified team, so team sport, by the second year. And by the end of the third year, that they have at least 3 teams in that sport. So again, just continuing to starting those teams and then beginning to grow that. And then the third one here is at the end of a region's second year, that they'll offer unified opportunities and competition in at least 25% of their sponsored sports. And that would include team and individual sports. Here at the state level, we've got a goal to add unified player development as well as unified competitive opportunities in team sports at both Fall Fest and Summer Games. Go to the next one. So here on this slide, I've started with statewide because again, there is absolutely no way that we can reach these numbers without all of your help. Recruiting new coaches, encouraging, our new and current coaches to become certified. You're really the boots on the ground that are out there doing that for us. So the first goal is recruiting 400 new coaches. This is really important to parallel our athlete growth goals. We don't want to continue putting more work on our current volunteers. So in order to grow athlete numbers, we also need to grow coach numbers. The second here is to retain 80% of our coaches. We want to keep the coaches we have. And this includes making sure that they're having a good experience, that they don't feel overworked. Because again, back to the first recruitment goal, right? Many hands make light work. With the last being that half of our coaches are certified in a sport. So again, just as always, need your help in getting those coaches certified. And then going into the regions, we're really hoping that moving into regions and this regionalization process can help us to better accomplish these goals. So working with the regions to really create dates per sport that will be consistent year to year. This will help coaches plan their schedules, knowing well in advance when those training schools are going to be held. As a lot of you know, we've also over the last year and a half, have moved a lot of those virtually. So it's continuing to analyze that and to see, where do we feel like that can be successful as we continue to move forward. And then in order to reach some of these certification goals, we want to have at least 2 coaches per training site or sport to be certified. Our current requirement is 1. So again, if we can double the number of coaches certified at each of our training sites, that's going to help us very easily accomplish some of these goals. And then the next one. So just to wrap up here, talking about adding regional sport management teams. So these are essentially the individuals per region who will help lead those sponsored sports within the region. They'll help identify and meet growth goals in that sport. They'll assist with competitions, recruit clinicians, and then help organize and run those training schools. They'll consist of SOPA coaches, sport experts, maybe some officials, and for sure athletes. Similar to the athlete leadership flow that I know a lot of you are familiar with, these regional sport management teams will report up to our statewide sport management teams. And that's a wrap for sports. I'll now pass it over to our money men, Dan and Dennis from our SOPA finance team.
Thank you, Michelle. Yes, I'm one of 3 money men. You'll hear from 2 of us today. And again, thank you for your continued participation. On the first slide, I want to talk about 2 or 3 things. There we go. Thank you. The Haverford Trust. Many of you know or should know that that is where the local funds from prior years are invested. It's a very financially prudent thing to do, to invest money in a place where it can grow for us. And that is exactly what has been happening. Our funds are there, segregated in about 40 or so more separate accounts, and each account earns money and reacts to the market individually. The second point I want to make is old money versus new money. You know, there are numerous accounts at Haverford, as I described, but what's going to happen to them when we go through this process that we're talking about right now of regionalization? And our approach has been slightly revised because we did not, admittedly, do such a great job with our first region. What we are now going to do is treat the old money at Haverford as just that. Old money belongs locally, given locally, and will be spent locally. We need to respect the efforts of the past and also the donors of the past. New money raised will become new region money. I understand that's a pretty heavy topic, and as you'll see in the next slide in a minute, we're going to have some future trainings and in-services on that concept. But lastly, I wanted to leave you with, it's that time of year, the time of year that all of us finance folk just so much enjoy, which is budget preparation. You see the dates in front of you. Prior to the beginning, we, the finance team, will be sending out worksheets to give you some historical information and also some guidelines surrounding the process. Thank you for your participation in this. Thank you for getting them back to us by Halloween. And good luck. We're here to support. Contact at any time. Dennis.
Thanks, Dan. I'm here to talk a little bit about the spending process once regionalization happens. We're structuring the spending process to allow spending approval at the regional level. As a bit of background, historically, spending was always structured at the local level to include a requester, typically a treasurer, or an approver, typically a program manager. That way, internal control was exercised by having at least 2 people as a part of every transaction, which certainly made my life a lot easier. Now, with regionalization, this is going to further the need for spending within an approved budget. And by that, I mean a regional budget. Traditionally, spending was pre-approved if it was included within the budget. With a region-wide budget, the regional executive director will need a way to anticipate and monitor local spending across the region. Fortunately for us, Microy, the tool you're used to for submitting check requests, Microy provides a tool to allow a view and approval by a regional executive director prior to spending. Similar to a purchase order, a requisition will be configured to permit pre-approval of spending during the year. Now, when coupled with a regular review of the regional budget, a regional executive director can approve or decline local spending, allowing timely and effective budget management. Thus, it is even more essential to prepare a well thought out budget for all the local programs within the region itself, because they'll be combined into one regional budget. Briefly, the details will be requests for spending, like now, can come from any team member, typically a coach or a coordinator or a finance coordinator. The request is then forwarded to the finance coordinator, who, being familiar with the team's local budget, can initiate a requisition. That requisition includes sufficient information, not all the information, but sufficient information about the spend, whether it's budgeted, what the approximate cost is, what the coding would be, and that sort of thing. And this will allow the regional executive director to make an informed approval of that spend, or declination in certain cases. Once that happens, the spending takes place. Now, it may not happen right away because the requisition may be initiated much earlier than the spend, which is fine. But once that approval happens, then the requisition is returned to the finance coordinator, who goes through and uses it to create a check request with the proper documentation, and goes through the regular team leader approval and forward to finance for payment, just like we do right now. So the addition here is simply an opportunity for the regional executive director to have some input on spending as it's happening, or even actually before it happens, to further aid in monitoring that budget. And that is the thinking on spending going forward. And I'll turn it over to the next person. Tim.
Thank you, Dennis. That is me. Hi, everybody. I am Tim Carryhart. I'm our Chief Development Officer here at Special Olympics Pennsylvania, and I'm just thrilled to be here today. I do wish we were all together in person. I want to just make a note that the breakout session, or the webinar that we will be doing, that'll be on a slide in a minute, is going to be focused on regionalization, but we recognize that not everybody is there yet. So it'll help us to bridge a gap a little bit between where most of you are today and what fundraising we hope will look like under a regional model. So next slide, please, Nick, I think. So here we go, fundraising as regions. And again, keep in mind, we're talking about both kind of what's going on today and where we hope to go. But we do want to start off talking about fundraising in a regional model. And so we're going to discuss during that webinar what we really want everybody to continue to do. That's today as a local program and tomorrow as a region. We're going to talk about the state events portfolio. And when we say that, we're talking about plunges, we're talking about Beaver Stadium Run, we're talking about the Uncathlons, et cetera. So this COVID environment has really illustrated to us how well people at the local program level can participate and then reap the benefits. So, and we want you to take advantage of as many of those opportunities as possible. That's why they exist. They're there to support all of us in this work. So we want to continue, and we'll talk about how to do that now, and how to do that as a region. And then finally, we'll talk about, in terms of events, new regional opportunities. This is specifically focused on events that will have some regional concepts that we'll be presenting to you all that we want our regions to consider going forward. This second bullet then does talk about our current state fundraisers, and so what is our plan for 2022, but it will help us kind of be a leaping off point beyond next year and into the future. And in fact, right here, it talks about the Inclusion Revolution campaign next year. So next year is our final year of the campaign that we've been conducting for the last 4 years. So next year will be the 5th and final year. The goal, as I hope you all remember, was $6.5 million when we started the campaign. We're now over $5 million into that campaign. So a little bit less than $1.5 million to go for the last year. But during the last year, we're going to give everybody across the state opportunities to participate in that campaign, not only as a way to talk to the community about who we are as an organization, what we do, why we do what we do, but also raise money, and ultimately raise money not just for the campaign, but for our local programs in our regions as we move forward. And I would also like to just indicate that as we wrap up the campaign at the end of next year, the campaign itself will end, but what we're doing is we're building out a toolkit of ways that you can continue to generate support for your local program. And finally, there's a note here on revenue share. And again, ultimately, when we're all regionalized, that will change dramatically. For now, it continues as we know it. It will always be a part of in some way, shape, or form of the state fundraising events, but we're going to talk a little bit about what we anticipate revenue share will look like. And again, how we get from here to there when we're fully regionalized by the end of 2024. Next slide, please. Next is all around donor relations and management. And when I say this, I'm talking about every type of donor you can consider out there, but primarily the folks that we're considering as potentially major donors. So people who have the ability to give significantly financially to help support your work and our work. And so again, you see there, we've referenced it a couple of times in here. We want you to follow the playbook, and I'm glad Julie said it's a work in progress, because it definitely is. And kudos to Julie and Greg and the greater Lehigh Valley and Pocono region for being the pioneers in this movement of regionalization. We are learning a lot as we go. And so, as she said, the playbook will remain live, and so we'll continue to add our new learnings to that playbook. But ultimately, underneath it, around major gift opportunities, we want to work with you, okay, so that you can approach people, companies, other entities in your local communities to generate significant funding for your local program. For us, it's all us, right, at that point. And so that's the structure of our major gift donor relations approach, is helping uncover those relationships that have the potential to be, significantly stronger in their support for our organization. And it all starts with you. And then finally, under that section, and this will play in with the events that we have on the drawing board right now, but we'll be putting together annual strategies. And so what that means is we're anticipating that there will be a toolkit with kind of an annual calendar that will have different times of the year to focus on different things. So I call them appeals. How are we going to appeal to the world out there to support our organization? And how are we making sure that we're all going out to our communities to seek their support, speaking from the same script, saying the same thing? And so we'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about matching up your particular donors with what they supported in the past, and then how do we fit them into this new annual calendar and roadmap. Additionally, on our webinar, we'll have Carrie, who's our LETR liaison for the state, and she will be talking about this new LETR structure that is a regional structure. We anticipate over the next several years that there will be LETR officers across the state that represent every region. And so we're trying to build out a volunteer infrastructure, so to speak, to grow our great partners in law enforcement and opportunities. And when I say opportunities there, it's not just about money. This is about volunteers. This is about connectivity in our communities. It's about just great people who can really be super supportive of Special Olympics, including financially as well. And then finally, we will be discussing grants. We'll talk a little bit about kind of the state's plan to oversee the grants process. We'll talk about what those processes are. We'll talk about the trainings that will be available. And right now we're trying to uncover some new regional grant opportunities. So when I say that, I'm speaking to organizations, primarily foundations, that have a specific interest in funding things in your particular region. So they may not be as interested in a very small product or program, but maybe when we grow it to be regionally, we can then apply to those foundations. So again, as it says right here, join us for a deeper dive into the world of fundraising as it relates to regionalization and life as we know it today, 7 o'clock. And I am going to pass it on to our VP of Marketing and Communications now, Nicole Jones. Nicole, you're up.
Yes, thank you so much. Nick, you can go to the next slide. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. As has been mentioned several times already within this presentation, the regional playbook is your roadmap. So within that document, you will find much of the information we are covering here today and so much more, like links and documents and resources, especially with respect to marketing and communications. So what I'm going to talk about briefly today is public relations, and under that, branding, media relations, materials, and web management. And then social media, so accounts, guidelines, and materials. I will give a brief snapshot of how marketing and communications will function under our regionalization model today, but please join us for a more in-depth webinar to cover these areas on September 29th at 7 p.m. At that time, we'll be able to answer many of your questions and even discuss ways in which we can expand our offerings and approach to set each region up for success. So next slide. So first up is branding. Our brand is our reputation, a reputation that is shared by all of the programs within Special Olympics, and one that exists in the hearts and minds of the public and stakeholders. So what is exciting about the move to regionalization is that we will update our branding to reflect the transition to team structures. So for example, instead of referring to Berks County, we now call this group of dedicated volunteers and athletes Team Berks. This change will be reflected in our regional branding. Our regional branding, or the region name, will be used across the entire region. Branding for local teams will include logos specifically designed for uniforms and social media to include both the region name and local team. So for those not yet a part of a region, we will discuss during our upcoming webinar initial transitions to a team structure, and other regional representations will be discussed. But as you can see to the right of your screens, here are two examples of what a Team Berks uniform logo option would look like, as well as a social media avatar, both including the region's name and the team's name. So next slide. Now we'll quickly discuss media relations and materials. With the addition of regional staff working alongside the state office as needed, the management of media opportunities and relationships will become a responsibility of the regional staff. They will work closely with their team leaders to make sure that the region increases the awareness of our brand, attracts even more people, and enlists new audiences, especially at the community level. Think of it as the roles of current public relations coordinators within many programs as receiving greater focus and assistance on a grassroots level, building our capacity to spread the word about our organization and the thousands of athletes that we serve. Now, with respect to marketing materials, resources and tools will continue to be developed at the state and regional level to aid in the marketing and promotion of our regional teams. And templates will be made available via Dropbox, broken out by region/local teams. So in addition to uniform and social media design files, resources will include a media database of contacts, our marketing and communications manual, as we usually offer, but updated, flyer templates, and so much more. Next slide, please. Next up is website management. So we are excited to be creating a web presence for each region, resulting in a total of 9 overarching regional websites by the end of 2024. So regionalization will enable us to create sites that use proper branding, are of high quality, and unify our program content in ways like never before. You will see from the below picture and the reference to the web address specialolympicspA-GLVPR.org that we've already created a site for Greater Lehigh Valley Pocono region that very much mimics the style and structure of our SOPR website, but provides very specific information for that region, which includes local team pages that we plan to expand upon in terms of content. Local teams that have an existing web presence will ultimately completely transition over to the web construct that has been created within the regional site. And much like with media relations that I just spoke about, regional staff will manage the regional website and work with local teams to manage their presence within the site. This is an ever expanding project that we are working to get just right. And so I thank the Greater Lehigh Valley Pocono region for being the first to help us create this structure. Not that they had much of a choice, but it is a wonderful work in progress that every region will soon benefit from. So next slide, please. Last but not least, we will touch on social media. In today's society, the use of social media has become a necessary daily activity. For us, it is a valuable communication tool to raise awareness and enable us to engage with our athletes, volunteers, donors, and quite frankly, the next generation of participants. Each region will have and monitor its own Facebook page that links to the state office account. And you will find after visiting GLVPR website, which I hope you do, that they have an existing Facebook page that serves as a way to highlight each of their local teams. Likewise, however, local teams will also be allowed to manage and maintain their own social media presence if desired. In order to ensure that pages are maintained, regional staff will gain administrative rights for their local teams, pages, to manage in the event of volunteer turnover. But lastly, official social media accounts held by regional and local teams will be limited to one per platform. And platforms are Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc. And a variety of social media resources and guidelines are currently available via our Dropbox that can be found on our website's resources page. Wow, that's it for me. Thank you for taking the time to hear this brief overview, and we look forward to having you join us for a more in-depth webinar on September 29th.
Thanks, Nicole. Nick, you can go to the next slide. So this update or commercial is very specific to local programs as they regionalize. If you are not currently regionalized and or you are regionalizing in 2022, then, or not regionalizing, sorry, in 2022, then this is something we just want you to be aware of, but currently there is no impact at all for you. Special Olympics International, or SOI for short, has developed a new application for participation, AKA the medical, and I think that's how we refer to it typically here in the state of Pennsylvania. And this new is for athletes that are registering or re-registering. So they're new or current athletes of ours. All Special Olympics programs are going to be required by Special Olympics International to use, again, what we are going to refer to as the online registration forms, which will include quite a few forms and not just the medical itself. Again, this is very specific to local programs as they regionalize, but wanted you to be aware that we have worked with Special Olympics International as well as our database vendors really for the last few years to make sure that we achieve our goals. Our goals are that we are able to have the end user, whether that's the athlete, the parent, or the guardian, manage the process of registering start to finish, and the local program not necessarily need to be involved as they have been in the past. That the SOPA staff and regional staff are responsible for the technical management and not local program management teams. And two, again, that it be fully integrated into our database systems, which would be VSIS as well as GMS, our games management system. Since February of this year, SOPA was able to pilot the online registration forms with the Greater Lehigh Valley Pocono region. And since then, I'd like to tell you that we've continued to improve the process as we work towards our goals. In January of 2022, SOPA is going to be rolling out the online registration forms with regions 7 and 2, again, the two newest regions. In 2023, and then again in 2024, we will again roll out the online registration form process with each region as they stand up. So again, just to reiterate, it's important that you understand until regionalized, local programs must continue to use the application for participation, aka our current medical. Regional staff will need to be in place to manage the new online registration forms, and local programs cannot manage beforehand. More information on the online registration forms process will certainly be available to all of our constituents within a region as they stand up. Should you have any specific questions, I would highly encourage you to reach out to me and I'd be happy to address them. That's all for me. I'm going to pass it to Gina.
Great. Chelsea, thank you very much. And thank you to all of our presenters as part of this session. As you can see, regionalization presents a lot of opportunity, and it's exciting. I hope that you learned a little bit today, and that with these great commercials that we've presented, that you want to learn more. We want to see all of you at our follow-up webinars, and we will be following up with the appropriate members of your team to really encourage participation. The information is really important, and we know that the more that you know, the more comfortable you will be in the process. We certainly appreciate all that you do, and we look forward to working with you to continue to do more and better for our athletes, for our volunteers, and our organization through regionalization.